COMP1050 Animation 2D Tools, Week 1, Lesson 1, Part 5, I think, or something like that. Anyways, we kind of talked about some of the basic things already, right? And up until now, we've kind of created symbols very quickly, but now this one is going to focus more on symbol creation. Guys and girls, symbols are the heart of what we're going to be doing when it comes to animation, creating games, and all that stuff. You need to know how to create symbols. It's like a key. All right. Again, we're able to import stuff from Illustrator and Photoshop. This one's a little bit cooler, this one, because it actually gets you to do this Mech Wars illustration that comes right from Illustrator, right? That's the kind of the final result. So what we want to try and do is import this stuff from Illustrator. So let's try that. So we're going to go to open up a new Flash file again. Flash. So we're going to go New ActionScript 3 right from here, and we're going to change our stage. I'm not sure what they want from our stage for this one, but it has to be exact, because if we don't do it right, then what's going to happen is we're not going to have enough space. Yeah, it's going to be 600 by 450. So let's go there, 600 by 450. So it makes the stage just a little bit bigger. And again, we're going to do a fit in window. So there's the whole stage. Now we're going to go File, Import, right? And we're going to import to stage. Now you can choose an AI file. An AI file is an Illustrator file, right? Or a PSD file, which is the background from Photoshop. So if we go to Illustrator, and if you notice, is all these different options you have, and these are all the layers, right? As an example, that we're going to import from Illustrator into Flash. Okay. If I click OK, I can actually move this a little higher. Come on. No, I can't. I press OK, and there we are. I've got two characters, right? Kind of cool looking ones too, right? I got this kind of a robot and what they call the hero, right? Funny thing is that the robot, here's the robot. Let me just go into Fit in Window. The robot and the hero, right? It's a group, right? If I go to my library, right now there's nothing in my library. I don't have my robot or my hero, because each of these things is an import from Illustrator. Now they're different objects, right now, but they're not symbols. So kind of cool. This is the first one that we're kind of getting kind of a cool looking symbol that we're going to fool around with. So what we want to try and do is we want to create this symbol on the stage, right? And there's different kinds of symbols. We can create symbols that are movie clips. We can create symbols that are graphics, and we can create symbols that are buttons. Buttons are special symbols because they have different states. So each frame of the button symbol itself, has a different state, an up state, hover state, and so on. That's what a symbol has, right, in Flash. A graphic symbol is simply like that, just a graphic. But most of the times, we're going to be creating movie clip symbols, right? That's what we're going to be making. And movie clip symbols can have their own animation. So you've got your main timeline animation, so the animation that's happening here, and maybe the animation, if I was just a symbol on the stage, maybe all I'd be doing is moving across. But if I move my arms and legs as I'm moving across the stage, that's my own internal timeline. Think about a symbol having its own nested timeline. Okay? Now it's a kind of sometimes it can screw you up if you think about it, right? But that's what it is. Each symbol has its own nested timeline, especially if it's a movie clip. Button symbols, like we talked about, and graphic symbols are very basic. We almost will never use them in this particular thing. Okay. So what we want to try and do is we want to select one of these guys here, like this guy here. Now you can use Modify, Convert to Symbol, or select them and click F8. Right? So let's try that. And we're going to call him the hero or hero. All right, so here it is. I like doing right click, convert to symbol. That's just my favorite way of doing it. And I'm going to call this object hero. Here we are. So we got the hero movie clip here, right? And the next one we're going to do, when he appears in the library, here he is, right? What we want to try and do is make the other one robot. So here's this one, right click, and what we'll do is convert to symbol, robot. Okay, so here's my robot, and I've got both of those things in here. The problem is, what have we done wrong? They're graphics. They're not movie clips. And what we want to do is kind of make movie clips. Now, if I erase these two things, what happens? Yeah, they're gone. So we don't want that. What we want to do, right, what we want to do is we can convert them, right? Again, we want to convert this to symbol, or we can break it up and put it back to normal. Like, for example, instead of, I can press Control Z again and again and again, right? And I'm going to keep going back and forth until there's no more hero or robot symbol. So again, convert to symbol, and be careful when we do it again. So here's the hero, and then instead of graphic, we want movie clip. The registration point's okay right now. I'll leave that the same. If I was going to use this in ActionScript, if I wanted to refer to this thing, to move it around with code, I need to click this button, export for ActionScript. Right now, we don't need to. Same thing with this. Right click, convert to symbol, movie clip, we'll call this robot. Now, if you notice, this is good because we got the right icon here that tells us these are movie clips as opposed to graphics. So now we want to import the, we've got these two things, we've got these two layers. Now we kind of want to import this stage layer, right? So let's try this out. We want to import this. We want to increase, we want to kind of add a new layer to the window, right, as an example, right? So let's go back. So here's my top layer, right? And I want to say, maybe create a new layer. So here it is. And this is where I'm importing. File, import, import to stage. And I'm going to go down into my PSD file now, and this is my Photoshop file. And if you notice, there's two different layers here, right? I want to select my top layer, flare only my flare layer, and put it on. So here I'm going to add it in. Okay, so here's flare, right? Don't worry about how it appears right now. I'm going to move this underneath the robot, all right? So here's my flare, and if you notice, it appears top left corner of the screen. Okay? And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to select the top layer, layer 3, and I'm going to import to stage, and I'm going to select the background PSD, the Photoshop file, open it, and this time select my background. So here's my background. That's kind of a cool background. I'm going to pull that right underneath the flare. Okay? Now I'm going to delete this extra layer. And I'm going to move these characters around, right? So here's my hero. Put him kind of down there, and put the robot over there, right? So again, kind of a cool effect. You've got two layers. You've got your flare effect, top left corner, right? And then you've got your background layer, right? And they're both imported from Photoshop. So you've got symbols imported from Illustrator, which we've built in Illustrator. Again, think about the power here, guys and girls. You can build whatever you like. If you're an Illustrator expert, right? Or even if you're not, you can learn to build some really cool symbols with basic objects like rectangles and ovals, modify them all up in Illustrator, right? So they're vector drawings, drag them, import them into Flash, just like we're doing here, and modify them as symbols. Okay, so let's go back. So we've kind of got those in there, right? We've created new Flash layers, and we've put them in place. And what we want to try and do now is we can actually go into symbol editing mode, right? Here, what they're showing you here in the library is you can actually organize your library so that your characters, you can create your own folders in your library, not just in your layers, right? So if I go back to my library, again, if you notice down here, there's another little folder. I can say characters. So you can organize your library nicely. Organization is really important, like hugely important, because what you want to try and do is you want to stay as organized as you can, and because you might have a lot of different assets in your library, right? Like, for example, you're making a game, maybe you're going to have a lot of different spaceships or different kind of missiles or whatever, and you want to kind of group those things in their own folders so you can manage a little bit more effectively. All right. Okay, so what we want to try and do once we're organized with that is we want to kind of double click onto the robot movie clip itself. And if you notice, when you do that, it kind of grays out like this, right? Kind of goes into the actual, it allows you to drill down into the actual clip itself. What we want to try and do is kind of hit this top right breast of the, or chest plate of the robot, if you will, right? So let's just try and do that. So top right chest plate. So how we do that, we go, again, I think a really cool thing to do is when you double click on the robot, everything else around it fades away. If I double click again, right, I can actually double click the right top breastplate, and then from there, if I go to my properties inspector, I can change the color to red, right? Now if I click away, if I click this scene all the way back here, right, I go back out, my robot's been modified a little bit. That one piece that's on the robot, that one chest plate now is red compared to everything else. Okay. So the great thing is, once you have this stuff happen, you can make as many of these robots as you want, right? Because right now we kind of drew this one robot with a red fill, but you can choose the paint bucket and choose any fill you want, right? Because right now we have our original robot that we've drawn, right? So here I can go back in there and change the color to whatever I want. This one is particularly green. So let's just try and do that just to match up with what we're doing. Again, double click, double click, double click. And then instead of this, we'll change it to this kind of a bright green color. So actually maybe a little bit too green. Maybe a little bit another kind of green, like maybe a bit of a darker green. There we go. And then to get out, click on scene, and we're back out here. So there's your robot. Okay. So what we can do, because it's a symbol, right? See here, we've got two robots. Well, we know we've tried this out with symbols before, but this is a complex symbol, right? So we can kind of come back out, go to my library, and drag another robot onto the screen. Here it is, right? And we notice it's on the same layer as the other robot, right? So it goes behind the hero, right? Because the hero is the topmost layer, right? So here's my robot. Here's the hero. I'm going to move the hero kind of in the middle a little bit down, right? And this robot here, what we can do is you can transform him, right? And what you can do, right? You can do a free transform, right? Or I can flip. Now if I flip vertically, he goes upside down, right? If I flip horizontally, he flips on his axis, right? So now he's looking this way, right? So kind of another cool little robot. And maybe what I want to do this time, and I don't know if they changed the breastplate, but let's just do it because I feel like it. We'll make this so that it's a different squad of robot, right? And we'll change this so that it's, you know, kind of like the brown coffee cup. There we go. Kind of a sandy robot. There we go. Why did it affect the first one? Anybody? Why did it affect the first one? We flipped it. Everything was good. And we changed the color. If we changed both of them, why?
Same object.
It's the same object. In order for us to make it so that it's different, we got to make it a new symbol, right? And call it something else. We can copy the object, make it a new symbol, right? And then from there, we can modify it as we want. Right? It's the same instance, too. We didn't even choose a different instance name or anything, right? Let's leave it like that for now. They're kind of sand robots. These guys came from the plains, these green robots, right? So ours came from the desert. All right. And what we want to kind of do is maybe add another one, right? So let's try and do that, like a third robot to the stage, right? So we take this one's already there, and if I control copy and control paste, here he is, right? But this one kind of looks like he's on top of the other one, right? Because I just made him, and I put him where I put him there. Now I can easily arrange him, just like we do, even though he's in the same layer, I can send him to back, right? So here he is, he's in the back layer. And the other thing that I can do now is, because of where he is, we can change his alpha transparency so he's a little bit back, or skew him so he's smaller, which is probably what we want to do. So let's choose the transform, and let's skew this robot so he's a little bit smaller and kind of up to the side. So we have another robot. We'll move this guy down to over here, right? So there we go. We've got a third robot there that kind of sits there, you know, a little army of robots, right? Very, very simple, right? We can add guides, right? So for example, if I want to turn on guides and so on, what guides do, right? And it allows us to, first of all, one thing we need to do is show rulers. Rulers kind of enable us to size the size of the screen. This is in pixels. We can change it to inches if you want, or something else. If I pull down a guide from here, as an example, and I want the robots, these two robots, and my hero to kind of snap to guide, right? They can all appear on the same line. Let me just make sure that I've got my selection tool on. There it is. So it's snapping right to guide, right? And same thing for my flare. I can move my lens flare off and to the left, or even transform that thing. Maybe it's a little bit too big, right? It's taking up too much of my screen. So I want to kind of put my lens flare kind of off to the left, right? Now I see some of the background, which is kind of weird, right? But hey, there we go. Make sense? All right. So right now, we can change the brightness of a particular instance altogether, right? If I go back and I change this, and I go color effect, I can go brightness, or I can go alpha. If I go brightness, I can reduce the brightness right down. I can make it so it's a lot dimmer, so it's kind of in the background. Take care. Right? There it is. I can also change the lens flare back to what it was, modify it, make it even bigger, right? No. Except what I want to do with this one, I can also make this a symbol if I want, or I can modify the alpha transparency value of this one as well by making it a symbol. So let's make it a symbol, and we'll call this flare, right? And then from there, once it's a symbol, I can change my color effect, my alpha, to make it like a little bit so that the background is fading out in the back, right? Symbols allow you so much power, right? Once you create a background effect, you can change it so that you're effectively, you can manipulate the object a lot more. Here's a great thinking. Here's some thoughts for you guys. Remember that symbols are objects, just like they are in programming, right? So imagine if I create my movie clip, an animation, and I make that a symbol, right? And what if my main animation, I can make it bigger or smaller by skewing it, by transforming it? What happens to the stage? The stage is our viewport, right? This is what we see. We're looking through our stage. This is what we see as the director. You know how the director kind of puts his fingers up like this and looks through? Well, that's our stage, right? So if our animation is the same size as the stage and I make it bigger, what am I doing? I'm zooming in. So I can create zoom in effects, zoom into a particular location on the stage at a particular time frame, right? And I can do it on its own timeline. So the animation itself which I've created into a symbol. I make this big animation, and I can zoom in on my main animation and zoom back out, creating these little scenes. It's really kind of cool. So symbols are really hugely powerful. Here, I'm just modifying these symbols that I've gotten from Illustrator and Photoshop. There is no animation at this point. Okay. So you can also change movie clips so that they're visible and invisible, right? Now remember, I want you to think about one more thing. I want you to put your programming hat on for one more second. I know it's been long today, and I've given you a lot of stuff. Just give me a little bit more attention, and I guarantee you it's going to work out for you. Put your programming hat on, right? Everything that I've done here, alpha transparency, brightness, position, right? Skewing, layers, it's all stuff you can do with programming. I can turn it on or off. Visibility, right, which is another option. Any option you see pretty much in the Properties Inspector, you can control with ActionScript, right? So you create your object, you can make part or all of it visible or invisible. You can add different movie clips together to make them symbols, right? Each movie clip can have its own timeline, right? This is the power of Flash. So like I said to you, Flash is a development environment. It's not just a tool to make swift movies for the internet. That's the minimum that it can do. All right, here's a great example of blending effects that you can use, and I've kind of created this little montage here. You got normal, darken, where you have an effect that blends with the background, right? And there's different things you can do with the background to blend in and out with different robots. Sometimes it's really important, and I didn't mention it, I probably should have mentioned it last project we did. We did 3 projects today, right? The second project we did that coffee cup. The third project, what we're doing right now, we're creating this graphic of these robots, right? But what I should really mention is sometimes you need to convert your vector graphics to bitmaps, right? And now you might think that's kind of counterintuitive, right? Why would I want bitmaps? Bitmaps, you lose kind of resolution and blah, blah. True, you do lose some quality, but the amount of processor intensity, so to speak, for a bitmap goes way lower than for a vector object. A vector object, the computer, your program, keeps track of everything. All the angles, all the vertices, all the curves, all the colors, everything. In a bitmap, it's just ones and zeros and different color variations for on or off, right? So it's a lot easier and much less processor intensive. So sometimes you need to do that, and you can export an object as a bitmap. But what happens because a bitmap loses resolution, this rasterization effect takes place, where you see these little pixelization, if you will, takes place. So be careful with it. Okay. So we kind of did this, we have a glowing orb in the flare. You can change it. You can make it blur. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. And again, all these special effects, when you change the symbol, right, allows you. You can do it all within your programming. Okay, so here we go. If you see down here where it says filters, I've selected my lens flare, and again, I'm going to add in a filter value, and I got to kind of go right in here, add filter, right? I'm going to add in a blur filter. Here it is, and I'm going to get medium quality. And if you notice, here it is. Look at that. So it kind of blurs the background out, right? So you can add in the same kind of very complex filtering, just like we can in Photoshop. Photoshop allows you a lot of different filters and everything else you can apply to an image. You can do a lot of these things here in Flash to kind of strengthen or weaken elements in the foreground or the background, right? And if you notice now, this robot can kind of stand out a little bit more in the lens flare compared to what he was being lost there before, right? Because it was a little bit too bright and it was a little bit, too sharp, too crisp, right? And there it is. There's the movie, right? I haven't made the move right now, but I'll tell you right now, each of these robots, right, if you really wanted to, you can dig down, you can isolate groups of their body parts, right? Because each of these body parts is drawn on the left-hand side especially, And what you can do is you can animate each part on its own, create different arms, legs, create an armature for this thing. It's almost ready to go. We're not going to do it. We just don't have the time today, right? But it can be done. Okay. 3D space. Even though we're doing 2D tools, Flash allows you to do stuff in 3D. At this particular stage in time today, I'm not going to go over it with you because I've had enough. I think so have you all. I see you guys glazing out. It's been 2.5 hours of nonstop drawing in Flash, right? But I've got it here for you. It's not as important as the other stuff we've done today, but I want you to try and practice on your own. Okay? So I'll leave it for you. I'm going to end it here. If you guys want to look through the rest of the PowerPoint presentation yourself, you're welcome to. I got a couple more words, but I'm going to end the movie.